Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast. I have from Montreal, Canada, Kimberly Darlington. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Thank you so much, Belinda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And you said October's a beautiful time to be in Montreal. I can only imagine what the outside looks like in terms of, I keep going to say spring, but you're in autumn, but I could just imagine how,
Mhm.
how beautiful it must be there.
Yeah, the fall leaves are in their full color, so we're very fortunate here.
Really?
And it's not too cold yet. We,
No.
we know it's coming.
Yeah. And I should have asked, do you have all the bears? Like when I lived in Canada, the bears, the brown bears, the friendly bears, we used to just walk along all the trail parks. It was hilarious. I'd be like walking into town and there they were, just walking next to me, it was, and I'm not joking, they were literally just, do you see them a
Yeah,
lot?
that's definitely true in a lot of places, but Montreal's a pretty big city. We're bigger than Melbourne, I think. So
Okay.
unless you see wildlife walking around in downtown Melbourne, here we won't see
Yeah.
it. We've got some raccoons and some squirrels, but
Yeah,
the
okay.
bears are in the north. So
Yeah, there you go. All right, so you've got a great story. So you started your company back in 2012. So what's that? 13? No, hang on. Is it what
13 years, yeah.
yeah, 13 years. I'm not calculating yet properly. But founder and president of Refined Substance. I want to get to the name as well, like, because I'm sure there's a reason for calling it Substance, which is a bilingual English-French investor relations and communications firm serving the global mining and critical materials sector. I'm going to need you to explain a bit around the critical materials sector. Your team pairs deep sector expertise with modern storytelling, and I love that, to improve understanding of complex industries and engage next-gen investors. You also, Kimberly, hold board readiness certification, which is CDID, and has advised listed issuers on IR and communications strategy. Tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about your journey. Yeah, tell us it all.
Sure. Well, thank you. Um, I started out, I did a degree in marketing at a university here in Canada called Queen's University. And when I graduated in 1993, there weren't a lot of jobs. So I ended up taking a job through a temp agency at the front desk of an entertainment company that was producing Broadway style musicals in Toronto at the time. And so I just kind of fell into show business. I started working there answering the phones, and then I ended up working in the public relations department. I didn't even know that PR was like a field that you could be in. I just thought people, I didn't realize what a press release was. I thought people just, journalists dug up the news. But anyway, sometimes they apparently have it spoon-fed to them. And I loved it. I really enjoyed the work. It was a company that was expanding. It was actually opening shows on Broadway at the time. So there was lots of travel for a young person to go to New York, Los
How cool.
Angeles. So it was very fun. And that company unfortunately had some financial difficulties and ended up no longer existing. But I had the bug for the entertainment business, and I did go into conventional PR after that. I worked for an agency in Toronto, and it was a very small, about 25, 30 people, boutique agency, very well known for getting great results in terms of media coverage, public relations results, changing perceptions. And I learned a lot there about, client service and how to properly work in an agency format. And I like that. And I've always thought that that model that they had there was a really nice little model for a business. So I just kind of kept that in the back of my mind. Meanwhile, in my personal life, I got married, and my husband, shortly after we got married, got a job offer to move to Montreal. And both he and I were originally from Montreal. There was a bit of a history here in Canada of English-speaking families leaving Montreal in the 70s and 80s for political reasons. There was a provincial government here that was very unpopular with English
Yeah, I
speakers.
think yeah.
So, yeah, so I don't know if you know that story,
Yeah, I've
but
heard about it. Yeah.
yeah, so when I met Ken, my husband, that was something we had in common, although obviously as children we didn't know each other. And when he got the offer, we said, well, why not? We'll go back to Montreal. It's where we're from. And that was 23 years ago. We never looked back. It's been an amazing experience. And we have two children. My daughter's 19, my son is almost 17, and they've grown up here speaking both English and French.
Is
So
it
it's
French
been
Canadian? Sorry, Kimberly, is it French Canadian that you like? Is that the language, or is it just is it French? Like, sorry, I should say French Canadian, but it's French, right? The
It's
language.
French, but just as your accent is different from somebody in London or somebody in New York, the accent is very different from what you'll hear people speaking French in France or in French Africa, for that matter. You have to remember that they were cut off from the French in 1763.
Yeah,
So
right.
for, 250 years plus, they've been speaking in a bubble, and the people in France are speaking in a bubble. And so the languages have, evolved separately. And so
Yeah,
it can be very, very difficult for somebody who's not used to the accent to understand. Absolutely.
yeah. And is that your sorry? And is that your like? Do you speak more French at home, or like, or do you speak more English, or do you
Well,
speak?
because my husband is what they call Anglophone, so speaking English, we mostly speak English at home, but my mom was French Canadian, so I grew up getting in trouble in French. And I found myself when my children were small, sort of repeating that legacy. And I thought, oh, they're going to get a really negative image of French. So I stopped doing that. But we always insisted that they learn, that they go
French?
to bilingual schools and that they really learn French. And I'm very happy they have. My daughter ended up doing a year in Switzerland in a French town because her French was so seamless that she was able to, communicate in
Yeah,
French and
cool.
get by in French. So I'm pretty proud of that. So yeah, we do the work I do is in mostly English with maybe about 40% French, I'd say.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, back to my story. So after moving to Montreal, I ended up meeting a fellow who was quite well known in the entertainment business. He had produced every major rock show in Montreal for the last 30 plus years. And he liked me, so we ended up working together, and he hired me to run a live show production business, which I worked with him for 12 years, during which I had my kids and started to grow our family. And also my husband, who worked in mining, was getting busier with his work and traveling more. And at one point we just realized it wasn't sustainable, because entertainment is a lot of late nights and a bit of travel, and he was traveling all over the world. And I came in from Vancouver at 2 in the morning, and he was getting up at 5 to go to
Oh gosh.
Turkey, and the children were 3 and 1. And we just looked at each other and said, this is nuts. We can't
Yeah,
continue
can't do
like
it.
this. So we mutually decided that I would take a step back from my job. And so I was at home and sort of thinking about what my next step would be. And it turned out that my husband Ken had some ex-colleagues in the mining industry who were building a mine down in Panama. It's called Cobre Panama. It's quite a famous copper mine now for not good reasons, but that's a
Yeah.
sidebar. And they needed someone to summarize all the monthly reports from the construction. So there was somebody working on permitting, there was somebody working on environmental standards, there was somebody working on building the transmission line. Take all these reports and compile them into one 20-page digest for, the board members and selected investors to have to read to know what the progress was like. And they asked Ken if he knew of anybody who could do that sort of thing. And he said, well, I'm pretty sure Kimberly could do it. So with his help explaining some of the technical terms, I took it on and I just loved it. I thought it was so interesting. And it turned out that they loved me because I knew nothing. I had to find a way to explain it in a way that someone else who knew nothing could understand it.
Oh, how cool.
If I couldn't understand it, I couldn't write it. So yeah, so that's how it started. And then there were a couple other projects that came in, and that ended up being more than I could do as one person. So that's when I started my company.
Oh wow. And how did you come up with refined substance? How did you come up with that name?
Well, I found that we were taking the substance of what the companies were trying to say, whether it was technical or voluminous or whatever it was, and we would refine that so that it could be easily understood by whoever the target audience is. So now that we work in a lot in investor relations, our target audience is investors. So if the substance is technical, drill results from an exploration program that may or may not indicate that there's something there to be mined, well, how are we going to take that technical information and refine it so that it can be understood by the investors? How are we going to talk to the communities in which we're drilling to, let them know what's going on in a way that they can understand? When I'm talking to the media, sometimes they are quite sophisticated about the technical details and sometimes they're not. So we just that's why we took the name. It's it's sort of a play on the fact that most stuff that's mine needs to be refined at some point, so it kind of goes along with that as well.
Yeah, I love that. And how big's your team, Kimberly? Like, have you got like have you kept it quite small, or is it a big team that you
Yeah,
have?
no, we're quite small, but I was just saying just before this call, we just took on two new clients this week, so we are going to be growing. At least right now we're just five of us, but we're going to be adding at least two other people in the next between now and the end of the year, and then after that we'll see. So again, I'm always thinking in my mind of that model that I had when I was working just around the turn of turn of the millennium in Toronto, where it was about 25 people, really nice collegial office, great people, great fun clients, and that's my North Star. That's where we're heading.
Yeah, because you started in 2012. Have you seen quite a shift or pivot at times in your business? I mean, we quickly spoke about COVID. COVID changed a lot of different things.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, well,
when
for me, it took a while to get established. I think what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs is, you have this initial spark, whether it's your passion, you figured out your business plan, or in my case, I suddenly had two or three people that wanted me to work for them. So you get all excited and you start it, but then, you really have to get established. And for me, it was a completely new industry. I mean, all my contacts in show business didn't serve me in the mining business. So going to all the conferences, shaking hands, meeting people, following up. It took a good 2, 3 years before
yeah.
I could get some solid ongoing work that would keep me and at least one other person busy. And that was going solid for a few years. And then, as we talked about earlier, COVID really just threw a wrench into all that because everyone had to stop their exploration activities briefly. All the investor conferences where you would be meeting people all dried up. So I spent the first part of COVID completely redoing my website because I thought, oh, that's something I can do just sitting around waiting for
I
the phone
know
to ring.
there's never time to do that. I was doing
Yeah,
it yesterday, thinking, oh my God, this is just such a drag. Like you're not in like, do you know what I mean? Like you just like the fit.
yeah.
It's interesting that you call out. Like there's so many people that call out as generally as an entrepreneur, the first 2 to 3 years because, and I love well, I relate, I should say, in terms of, you were asking me about my backstory. When you change industries, and people, I don't know if this happened to you, but people have quite often said to me, just tap back into your old network, B, or the network you've got. But when you're doing something different, quite often the network that knew you for what they knew you for, it's a bit of a shift for them to understand. Well, hang on, you're not really doing what you used to do for me anymore. So how are you helping me now? Or how can you support me now? There's just this. It's almost like there's this. It's not a box, but it's just like, no, that's what you were. That's how I know you.
Mhm.
I can't imagine you doing anything differently. Why? Like, and so it is a real start again, so to speak, in terms of, well, you've got to put yourself back out there. You've got to connect and create a new network and
Yeah,
almost
I think it's not. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you go.
I was just gonna say it may even be harder if you're sort of connected to your initial industry. I mean, in my case, really, there's hardly any overlap at all, other than the fact that I think some of the fundamentals that I learned in show business about, there's no such thing as no, the show must go on, always negotiate. These are tenets that I hold really close to me as I go forward in this other business. But there aren't any contacts that know me as a show producer. Whereas if you have some overlap, let's say you go from public relations into advertising, it's harder because people do know you for, as you say, for a certain thing. And then now you're saying, well, actually, I'm doing this now. And, it almost does not compute for a
No,
while.
exactly. It does not compute. They're looking at you going like, why? And then you're going, because this is what is my purpose. This is here what is here to fulfill me. That does not fulfill me any longer. I know there's an opportunity here.
Hmm.
It's almost like, yeah, it's really, I don't know. I haven't spoken to anyone about this before, like I am having this conversation with you, but it's a really interesting one in terms of that. And it's also like what you're talking about in terms of completely moving from one industry to another. You are starting from scratch. You are literally starting from scratch. And that is not for the faint-hearted, right? Like it takes a lot of courage for me. It takes a lot of being curious, the ability
Absolutely.
just and that persistence piece because you get
Absolutely. You have to be persistent. That's
so,
very, very, probably the most important thing, right?
yeah. And
Without being a pest.
yeah, how do you or how have you remained persistent all these years? Like, like there's probably been times where you just like, I just want to pack this in. This is just
Hmm.
too hard. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I guess because I'm very passionate about it. And I think that's why I think it's important to find your why in whatever you're doing. And as I say, it's no easy street building a business. So if you don't know why you're doing it, it's very hard to keep going. But for me, the real why came when my daughter was quite young. I think she was maybe 8 or 9 years old. And she came home from school and said, Mom, the teacher at school said that mining is evil. And of course, that perked up my husband's ears too, because he was working in it as well. And he said, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, it pollutes the planet and poisons the fish. And she said, we're digging up the earth and leaving big scars. And I said, well, does she like driving her car? Because the car didn't grow on a farm. It was mined. Those metals were mined, and your television is mined, and your phone is mined, and the fork you're holding right now, that metal was mined. So it's a little hard to hear that they think it's evil when they're profiting off of the
yeah,
fruits of mining in every day that they live. And I think that's an educational issue and that's a communications issue, right? The other piece of that is that, you live in Australia, I live in Canada. These are countries that they're built on mining, right? This is backbone of our industrial complex. So we've learned how to do mining in a very responsible way. You're not going to find a mine in Australia that's polluting and killing fish and wildlife, right? They know how to do it right. They may not have always done it right in the
yeah,
past,
yeah,
but they know how to do it right now. And it's the same thing in Canada. So we also need to be kind of bragging about that.
yeah.
And we have a duty, not just, an opportunity, but a duty to take that knowledge and those standards and export them to other places in this world where perhaps they're not as stringent, they don't care as much about the environment yet, or they're not as educated yet about the
Yeah,
impacts.
which is so important because that was actually going to take me to this always happens. That was going to take me to my next question around these next gen. You talk about next gen, you engage with next gen investors. Tell
Hmm.
me like about this next generation because even what you were just talking about now, like there's been bad business, not just in mining, but in so many other sectors, etc.
Hmm.
We've got this next generation coming through, your daughter included, your other child as
Hmm.
well, like, my nieces, nephews, etc. What are they doing differently? Like, what are you seeing, like, in terms of, yeah,
Well,
from a
this
mining
is this
perspective,
gener
sorry.
yeah, this is this generation. Well, they call it Gen Z. I know that you and I say Z, but let's call them Gen Z for ease of conversation. They have a different attitude, right? They think that life is going to be hard, but they want to make the most of it and they want to get involved and they want to learn stuff. I find them really motivated to find out stuff and to learn more. And I work with always try to hire young people as much as I can. They're so hardworking, they're so inquisitive, they want to learn. Sure, they want to make millions of dollars and have, 3 homes and travel the world. And I think that's great. It's great. It's good to have ambition.
Yeah, that's so,
But they want to learn, and if you are digging deep into the mining industry and learning, you're going to find exactly what I just said, that it's being done responsibly,
yeah,
and there is opportunity there. There's great career opportunity. There's great investment opportunity right now. I mean, the price of gold is driving a lot of investment back into mining, which it's been a long wait, I'll be honest. The what we call junior miners, who are companies that are looking for ore but have not actually started producing anything yet, are finally seeing a bit of love in the markets. So that's nice to see. So these Gen Zs are like, well, how can I get involved? I only have $1,000, but how can I invest? And I just think that excitement about the future and wanting to be a part of it is something that I really want to help foster.
yeah, I love that. And it's all about they want to do good, right? Like it's having that purpose. They want to make
Yeah,
sure that the world is a better place, not worse off.
exactly.
And I think they look at us at times thinking, gosh, you work like Trojan horses. You've done it all the wrong way. Like it doesn't have to be this hard. Like I know that, quite often a few of them are like, what, like it's
Yeah.
super fascinating. And I do think that, there is a massive opportunity with this next gen, but I also think that, or Gen Z, I do say Gen Z. And then you just made me realize Gen Z. But I also think they have a lot to learn from us as well, right? Like in terms of, I look at it and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this in terms of there's the next, next gen of investors, leaders, etc. And so they're the up and comings, they're more curious, probably not more, but they're curious. They've got a different take on life, like leadership, etc. We've also had a lot of experience. So how do you bring the two together? Because I think that's when, there's huge richness in,
Mhm.
especially probably from a mining perspective, again, and other category, other industries.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that's
the
what we try to do at Refined Substance. I have a senior colleague with me, and we're both firmly Gen X. And we've been in the industry. Well, I've been in a few industries. We've been in the workforce, let's say, for 25 years plus. So, what can we impart in terms of knowledge, whether it's, actual, information or just lifestyle, life lessons, things that we've learned along the way, balancing work and life, balancing family that we can impart to this next generation and how willing are they to listen. And I do think that this Gen Z is more willing to listen than perhaps the most immediate generation, the millennials. And I think that's true of anyone, the generation immediately preceding or after you, if you go, oh, they don't know what they're doing. But this Gen Z, for me, anyways, is a generation, there's millennials between us. So it's a different dynamic. And like I say, I do think that they're ready to hear some of the wise wisdom that we can impart, and also to apply that to their own realities, which of course, they've grown up with everything online. It's a different world.
Yeah.
So how do they integrate what we have to say and anything that we can provide in terms of life lessons to their reality?
I love that you're bringing that because I'm all about the life leadership business. And when you booked in for the pod, and I asked what's one unique insider experience, lived experience in life leadership or business, you said that it's possible to do well and also do good by improving perceptions of poorly understood industries such as mining. And you've talked about that briefly. By elevating, empowering other women as much as possible, and by encouraging the next generation and watching them grow and thrive. So you've talked about three
That's
different
right.
things in that
Yeah.
response. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, doing well and also doing good. I think I've touched on that in
Yeah.
terms of why I do what I do and trying to make this world a better place. And just to add a little thing on that, we talked earlier about critical minerals. It's not just digging up gold anymore. We're looking for graphite, we're looking for lithium, we're looking for copper. These are all essential if we want to ever get rid of our dependence on fossil fuels for energy. So
Yeah.
any kind of energy generation, whether it's a wind turbine, a solar panel, what have you, to get that generated energy to where you need the energy, you need copper. The only other alternative is aluminum, and aluminum is not as durable. So
Yeah.
copper is probably the most critical mineral. Then to store that energy, you need batteries. Those batteries need lithium, cobalt, nickel, there's all kinds of new technologies now, including other critical minerals. I think in Canada, I think we have 32 critical minerals now on our list, and I'm not sure how many you have, but
Yeah.
it's growing all the time
I should
because
know, but I don't. Yeah.
new technologies come in. So all this to say that yes, we're mining, but that the mining is for minerals that is going to take us off of a dependence on oil and gas. And I think that's a key message that also gets lost in the messaging that when we're talking about mining to the general public. They don't see
Yeah.
that connect.
Yeah.
It's growing though, because the kids I call them, but Generation Z or Z, they care about the future. They're going to be here a lot longer than you or me. So, they don't want to be in a future where everyone's burning carbon,
No.
based fuels. They want to be in this electric transition. So we need those minerals, and they're starting to make that connection. So that's the first point. And then the point about empowering women, I'm very involved in a global association called Women in Mining. We have chapters all around the world. I'm involved with our local chapter here in Montreal, and that just involves organizing networking events, showcasing women with some achievements through either a presentation or a panel, and just getting a chance to, brag about other women's incredible achievements, particularly in this heavily male-dominated
Yeah, I was about to
industry.
say, yeah, it is heavily
Yeah.
male dominated, isn't it?
Yeah, and if there's one life lesson that I really try to impart, particularly to younger women, it's something that I didn't learn probably until I was about 35 or maybe even 40, that there's no zero-sum game with women, right? Like I think we grow up, we're conditioned to, be competitive and, be, I don't want to say bitchy, but just like, criticizing and judgmental of other women and feeling like, well, if she's getting ahead then something's wrong with her and I should be jealous. And I don't think that that serves anyone, and I think it's something that you just kind of, I don't even know how I realized it at some point, but you just realize that's it's a fallacy. It's something that our society has imposed upon us, and the truth is that when you help another woman you also help yourself,
Yeah, it's
and
part of the
it's a
sisterhood, I say.
sisterhood,
Yeah,
right?
like
So
I like when I think when we poo-poo other women or, like it's just not, it's or do something that's not cool. It's just, and I use that term, not cool, but it's just, it's not, or a woman, you see a woman doing something that's not part of the sisterhood, you're kind of like, why are you doing that? Like,
yeah,
you're not promoting women, you're not helping women. Women help women, women support women, right? Like, and it's not like
that's
rah
right.
rah. It's just something, yeah, it's the sisterhood, exactly that.
Yeah. So that's what we try to do. So that was the second thing. And what was the third thing I said?
And then
I
you
can't
said
remember.
encouraging the next generation and watching them grow and thrive, which you've talked about in
Yeah.
terms of just that ability to, well, you're supporting them, engaging with those next gen of investors. Do they, out of
That's good.
interest, do they like, do you find quite often that they, like, if you compare yourself to like when you were their age,
Hmm.
do you think they know more or do you think they know less than what we knew at that age?
I think they have more information. This information is so readily available, but I don't think they've learned well, and I don't think I did either. You have to learn how to kind of be in the world, how to. I had a fellow working for me, and a client wrote back an email that was, well, a little bit terse, maybe, but it's still only an email. It wasn't a phone call. And he's like, "That guy is such a jerk. I can't believe he would write that. I'm so mad." And I said, first of all, it's an email. We don't know what the tone is. You can't read the tone into the email. Maybe they just, were hurried or whatever. Second of all, it's business. We can't take that personally. You
Personally.
can't get mad. And I remember actually wishing for the death of a client years ago when I was about 26 because I hated them so much. And I just think, now what a waste of energy. It's not personal. And maybe that person was going through something hard. So I try to impart that kind of self-awareness, I guess, or
Yeah.
maturity to the young people I work with as well. And hopefully it's helping.
I love that. And you must come up against some tricky people in the mining industry and the
Oh,
business.
yeah. I mean,
You're
every industry has their,
100% right.
yeah,
Do you
characters.
do you do you have is there a point that you get to with some where you're just like, I refuse to work with you. You don't align to my values. How do you, given all your experience now, because I know that
Yeah.
I have certainly set myself more boundaries of what will put up with and what I won't put up with as I
Hmm.
go forward.
I haven't had any experiences where I've had to really just cut a client loose for any particular reason. I think probably if they were, found to be criminally responsible for something, I would want to cut ties. And then the only other reason why I would no longer work with someone is I have a strict policy where if they haven't paid their bills after 60 days, we cut off working for
Yeah.
them because I don't want to continue. I know other people in this industry who continue to do a little bit of work here and there, and they're owed thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. And these are a lot of these junior companies who aren't producing yet, they don't have any revenues, right? So I know that it's hard for them, and that's why we charge low rates. We don't bill flat retainers. We only bill for the hours we work because we don't want to take their money if we're not doing anything. But on the other hand, when we work, we need to get paid. I need to pay my people. So if I'm not getting paid after a couple of months, then that's when I would part ways with a client.
Yeah, I love that. Last question. What would be one piece of advice you would give a Gen Zer, who was looking to become an investor in mining,
Hmm.
but I didn't even know where to start. But it was almost
Hmm.
like a side hustle for them. They had their
Hmm.
full-time job or whatever, but they saw this as a side hustle. But that's where
Hmm.
they've got their ultimate passion. So I kind of think about you when you were in show, like what were you in shows? You were in shows, that's right. Like
Yeah. I was behind, I was the backstage. I
yeah,
produced shows.
you
I'm
produced
not a
shows. So
show
you but
like.
and you didn't obviously you somewhat fell into what you're doing now, but you think
Mhm.
about your role and then you wanted to move into something else. What would be
Mhm.
a piece of advice you'd give them?
Mhm. Well, I think if they're interested in investing in mining, there's a great opportunity right now, especially if you're a young person, you have a long-term horizon in junior mining, which, as I say, are these companies that are still looking for the minerals. They
Yeah.
haven't actually started producing anything yet. So I would advise you to get very informed on whatever critical mineral, maybe it's copper, because as I said, I think this is the critical copper. Look at the statistics that are out there on the shortages that are projected in the coming years. If we continue to need copper at the extent they're projecting that we will for electric vehicles, for grid, for energy storage, for energy transmission, we're going to need in 30 years' time, we'll need as much copper every year as all the copper that's ever been mined in history so far. So where's it all going to come from? Some of it can be recycled. Copper is one of the few minerals that can be recycled and recycled indefinitely, but not all of it, right? So that would be, if I were a potential investor, I would get very informed about a
Yeah, right.
particular element. Maybe it's copper. Maybe you're very interested in gold. It's a good time to be interested in gold. It's not a critical mineral, but it is a hedge against uncertain times. And if anything can be said about these times globally, they're extremely uncertain. We
Yes.
never know. We never know what the occupant of the White House is going to announce on any given
I
day.
know.
And the more uncertain times become, the more interesting gold becomes. And you see it in the gold price. I think it touched $4,000 US either today or yesterday, which is a new all-time high. So as I said earlier, that interest is now trickling down into companies that are out there searching for gold. So if you can become informed about how to pick those companies, and there's lots of books on the subject, you can become a very successful investor.
Yeah, amazing. Incredible. How do we find out more about you, Kimberly? How do we find out more about refined substance?
Well, we have a website, www.refinedsubstance.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to hear from people on LinkedIn who want to connect. And hopefully, going to get to Australia one day. We're
Yeah, you'll
working
have to
right now.
get to us. Come to Melbourne. Don't go just to Sydney.
Yeah.
Melbourne's
Well, we're working right now with a client who's going to be at a big conference, a mining conference in Sydney, in the middle of October,
oh, okay.
helping them get ready with all their, booth banners and presentation materials and things like that. So one day I hope to get to that
Yeah.
conference, and then
Yeah,
of course the
and I
go
hope to get
ahead.
to I hope to get to Montreal. I have not been. I
Yeah,
cannot believe I lived in Canada for a year and didn't get to I didn't even get to Toronto. I stayed in just that BC side. So
yeah. Well, it's a big country, just like Australia, but I will promise you, if I get to Sydney, I'll be definitely coming to Melbourne as well.
yeah, excellent. We'll have to have a coffee together. We have
I'd
good
love
coffee
that.
here in Melbourne. So yeah. Thank you,
Great.
Kimberly. It's been a real joy talking to you. You've
Yes, you as well.
lots of wise words of wisdom and love what you're doing. And I'm wishing you utmost success with the next phase of refined substance, especially with your two new clients.
Thank you so much, and wishing you all the best as well.
Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.